Mark,
Paul.
going. That's me. What's going on? We.
Nothing much.
I always forget which way to point. I'm always pointing in the wrong way. We are now on into Dark Crisis, and now we're starting to expand beyond the Dark Crisis title itself into some tie-ins now. So we will talk about those tie-ins in just a second. We are back. We are back. Dark Crisis has started. We're past the road. We're actually down the road. We're like a couple miles into the road, and now we're starting to
Okay.
now have those tendrils reach out and move into other titles as well. So we got our
I feel
first
like
batch of tie-ins.
it's folding open. It's not folding closed. It's folding open right now.
Exactly. It's becoming bigger and bigger and encompassing more and more. And we have our first tie-ins with both Young Justice and with the Flash. And we'll talk about both of those, but we're going to start with Young Justice. So it I was struck. The first thing that struck me was the first couple of pages. How much what's the word I'm thinking for? Exposition there was with Cassie, with their internal talking
Yeah,
about herself.
it got extremely meta too. It shows that through this event, Williamson is not tone deaf to the concerns of the comic book community, and he's applying it to the characters inside the story versus just having an interview and addressing it in like a PR thing. Like these characters have been like shelved; they've been overshadowed by other characters inside their respective families and stuff, and they've had major events happen. These used to be major front running like side characters in the DC universe that have just been uh, they're living under the shadow of other characters, and they kind of addressed that. And it was insane, and they did it all inside like a pretty much narration dialogue in the events of the eulogy that was held in Dark Crisis #1.
Right, yeah, Megan Fitzgerald, I think, did a great job. Like to your point, is the three main characters, Connor and Tim and Bart. They're kind of like they're called almost the forgotten generation here, right? Because they've lost as much as anyone else has, but they're not like blood as other people, so they really don't get to grieve like other people do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was pretty cool how they played into that heavily, and it
Right.
was
Yeah, and so then Cassie is basically the person who seems to go. She's going to be driving this story mainly, and so she goes and she's talking to each of them, and she suddenly says just one little thing, and the next thing you know, those three are gone.
yeah, that was a really cool moment. Like Fitzgerald really understands like the dynamic of friends, like how
Right.
this isn't just a super team, this is a super set of friends, and the way that they were interacting awkwardly around each other, having not seen each other in so long, they didn't know how to interact with each other. They felt very standoffish, and then in that moment, they were gone, and all of a sudden, that automatic sense of worry is kind of like you have friends that you haven't seen for years, and you see them again, you don't know how to act, but you still have all those feelings there. She automatically goes in to like protection mode. I thought that was really cool. And now she doesn't know where they went to; they just vanished.
Right. And as she goes to try to find them and talk to other people, like John, like Dick Grayson, whatever, they're basically like Wally West. They're basically too involved in what's going on with Dark Crisis proper to really be able to do anything, and they just kind of write it off as though they're all grieving in their own way, and give them some space, whatever. And
Kids will be
Cassie's
kids, kind
convinced.
of thing.
Exactly. And Cassie's like, all I did was, I said this one thing that I thought some of them had stayed dead, and boom, they were all gone. And so she also starts to feel some guilt as well. But in the reality now that the three of them are in, interestingly, each of them know that there's something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't know how they got there. They don't know how to get back. They don't really know what's going on. All they know is that um, in this world, um, Young Justice is needed.
Yeah, so there was a lot to be said about where they ended up. So it
Mhm.
seemed like they ended up into an alternate parallel simulation universe. We're not sure yet. We do know from Justice League Incarnate that that's where Barry Allen is. Barry Allen is being looked for, and he's in some kind of false reality that is looking like all of his dreams come true, and he's just playing out the notions. We also know from just because we know that's where the Justice League is as well. All the individual members of the Justice League are in their own version of what should be a perfect world for them. What I found very interesting in this is I can only assume that's where they went, but they went together. They're not
Right.
separated, they're not individual. And I honestly feel that if they were separated, they might not all know that this is not right. Somebody like Superboy, who is longing extra hard for for what could have been, for what used to be, I think he might be caught up in the illusion pretty easily. But you do have Bart there, you do have Tim there with him, and I think that's what kind of just like broke straight through the illusion is the fact that they're all together. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And I don't know how you feel about it, but in my mind, this whole false reality thing is literally a callback to Crisis on Infinite Earths and Infinite Crisis. This to me seems like the world where Earth 2 Superman, Lois, Alexander, and Superboy Prime went at the end of Crisis on Infinite Earths. They went to their own pocket reality paradise, and then you fast forward 25 years and we find out that paradise for eternity is hell, and that's what kind of drove the events of Infinite Crisis. So I'm thinking this is a callback to that little pocket paradise thing.
Right. And also, I've read some things where DC and Josh Williamson is really saying that even more than Infinite Crisis, he really considers this Dark Crisis to be the true sequel to Crisis on Infinite Earths. To me, I almost think it's okay. You had Crisis on Infinite Earths, and then you had, almost the dark side, Infinite Crisis, because Infinite Crisis was a response in some ways to Identity Crisis. It was a dark and gritty and everything, and that was really, was not
Yeah,
really what, you know. And now you have Hope, on this side is, coming as well. So it's almost like you had the
that's
original,
the energy that Fry is trying to even harness to fuel his machine.
right. Right. So you had the original, and then you have almost the yin and the yang of Infinite Crisis and Dark Crisis. And it's funny because it's called Dark Crisis, but
Mhm.
it's really going to be, I obviously we don't know how it ends, but it's really going to be, I think, about hope and how that is going to move the DC universe forward. And you made an interesting point too, is that the three of them are together. So it would be interesting. I think it's interesting that, assuming, as I do in what you said, that each of these heroes are put into a parallel universe that, to them anyway, is almost their
Paradise.
ideal paradise. That the three of them went together. So it's really
They're
kind of
meant
like,
to
okay,
be together. The
exactly,
team.
they're meant to be together. And so, as opposed to, yes, you have the Justice League that are a team, but they've never really had the friendships or the camaraderie or the intimacy that it seems as though the second generation, the legacy heroes, have had with each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the most part, the rest of this book was pretty straightforward, just delivering on some kind of adventure action kind of stuff. We see the Young Justice team having a reoccurring fight with somebody that they have previously years ago, and it feels the same, but there's obviously some difference in it. And they kind of definitely play with the character, and it's definitely a sign of its times because
Right.
that story brought in today was it wasn't cringy, but it was very hokey and intentionally so, and they were actually using that they were playing with that element in the story a lot. But we pretty much have Cassie figuring out that she's on her own to find them, and she's kind of sitting there in her solitude, figuring out like, what am I going to do? What I'm do? I'm going to find them. Cut to back in the little paradise dimension, we get Cassie save them. Now I don't know if this is our Cassie or a Cassie from this illusion, but either way, uh, I'm definitely I'm definitely pumped for the next one. I'm assuming it's one from the illusion. It says the next issue is called A Tale of Two Cassies,
Hmm.
so we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, I totally agree. It definitely was a callback to an earlier time. I don't think I've ever seen the words boob hypnotized used in a comic book before. Um, but it is here, and even I mean, Cassie, even at the very end on that last page, that full panel, she looks very 80s-ish. She's got the
Bombardier
pipe,
goggles.
exactly, the bombardier goggles and everything. So um, it definitely is something that I really think that they're gonna play with and play up the history and the timelines and the different eras of DC throughout this series as well. So I can't wait to see where it goes from here. And yeah, I'm thinking that this is a different Cassie as well. I don't think it's the same Cassie, but it'll be interesting to see where Megan Fitzgerald takes this going forward. And then we have the Flash, which I thought I absolutely loved. It starts off. It starts off at the end, almost. It seems like, right?
Oh,
The very first,
very intense way to start a book too.
yeah, yeah. Basically, Barry Allen beating the snot out of the Reverse Flash on the very first page,
I'm
and then
done
you
letting you
basically.
torture me. You're never going to hurt my family again. Just wailing into him.
Mhm. And then it flashes back to 24 hours earlier, and so we'll catch up from how we got to where we were. But again, it talks to hope, it talks to family. You have Dr. Midnight talking about how there's a Barry Allen that's out there, maybe multiple Barry Allens, and they each have the same phone number, but they may have different area codes, and that's
Mr.
how they're gonna.
Terrific.
Exactly. That's how they're going to find him. So yeah, Mr. Terrific. Did I say something else? I think I probably did.
Dr. Midnight. I would have loved
Dr.
that.
Midnight.
But
Yeah, Mr. Terrific. You're absolutely right. Because he works for him.
yeah, Wally currently works at Terrific
Yeah,
Tech.
and he loves it because they give free lunches. um, so Mr. Terrific is basically saying, what they're going to do is they're going to almost like dial up Barry Allen, and to get his location, they're going to go through. They're going to get him, and then they're going to use his little adapter for his wrist. They'll hit it. They'll come back. Everything's fine and dandy, except
yeah,
we have some little ears listening.
yeah. So I thought that Jeremy Adams did a phenomenal job setting the tone of this in the opening. Because if you're just picking these up for the tie-ins, you're 100% on board. Like you're missing nothing. But if you've been reading Flash ongoing that Jeremy Adams is also writing, you get a lot of extra context in this with this whole frequency thing that they're talking about, how they're able to kind of like tap into the hyper time speed force stuff and kind of track them. It's almost like a signature that they leave in hyper time. That was Jeremy Adams' start to Flash. The first 6 issues in the arc when Wally was bouncing through hyper time and everything. That's how they found him. So it was kind of a callback to that. So we know how that works and operates and everything. So I thought that was an extra little thank you to the readers that have been keeping up with it. And the Mr. Terrific is always terrific, for lack of a better words. It's always great getting JSAers, especially these days. And we also got the whole Flash family that they showed us. We got Max Mercury there. Of course, Wallace is there, Jesse Quick, and Jay Garrett himself. And dude, this artist just did a fantastic job. And I'm not going to try to say the name. It's near impossible for me. I guarantee to mess it up.
Yeah.
The artwork.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, and it's again the way it's done, where you see one sentence ending on one page, and you flip it over and you see the whole Flash family there. So, and and he also does something kind of interesting too, where they talked about that they're gonna go and they're gonna find Barry, and that's a Flash fact.
That's a Flash fact, and he says it as he's pulling down the hood. He's like so serious with the family on his back and everything, and that's a Flash fact. But like Paul mentioned, there are little ears in their room. Both Wally's kids are there, and they want to be helpful so bad, and that also has been really played into. And the whole dynamic of family has been played into a lot in this run. So it's not surprising that those little boogers grab the wristbands that are required to travel through time and make your way home and just dip into the Speed Force, thinking that they're being helpful. So now we've added a whole nother element of danger and purpose to this tie-in. Not only are they looking for Barry, they have to find the kids in the midst of all of it. So they confirmed that there's 3 matching signatures. There are 3 potential Barry Allens, and they're hoping one of them is the one that they're after. So they've split the Flash family up into 3 teams of 2 to go check on each of them. It almost reminded me of that Matthew McConaughey, Christopher Nolan movie where they have the different planets that they're hoping are good planets. They have to go check on them, and you're guaranteed that it's going to at least be crazy on 2 of them. And that didn't disappoint. It sure was.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the fact, my favorite line in the entire book was when his kids jump through and they end up on this earth, and his son says, "Dad's gonna go back and change history, so he has kids who will listen to him." It's like, and he recognizes.
Dude, when I was reading it, I had to stop and show that to Paul. I'm like, dude, look at the other Paul Rogers. He said, "Oh, we are so dead or worse. I bet Dad changes history so he gets kids that listen to him instead of us." Like,
it's like I mean, it's funny. It's historic. It calls back to what's happened in the Flash. It recognizes that the kids recognize what their parents were capable of. It works on so many different levels. But to your point, there are 3 different. There is, for lack of a better term, for me, the first Barry Allen possible location to me almost is like a Barry Allen. I think Barry Allen as like a Lex Luthor. Almost.
Yeah, where the kids landed when you have like
exactly.
Allen Tower and everything, and
right.
he comes up behind him looking like Batman with a lightning bolt going sideways.
Right. So even better, maybe more a Bruce Wayne. Okay, so he's like a Bruce Wayne type, because they give you that image of the silhouette of him almost like Batman.
Mm-hmm.
The second
one was straight up Mad Max.
Exactly.
Dude, that was so cool.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, he's riding in the hot rod car with a lightning bolt on it. The cowboy's got the cool mustache coming out like Rob's Fat Stacks. And
mm-hmm. Right. And then the third one, I think, to me, is like an 80s type thing. Because to me, if you notice in the artwork of that, it almost looks like it's 80s because you can actually see the little pixels.
The
and
bendy
all the little,
dots.
Exactly, and all the skin and everything. And so to me, that's a callback to how comics were printed in the 70s and the 80s. To me,
do you remember? What was that? What issue of it was Flash? It was like when the series restarted or something. But he's like running with the jets behind him.
Mm-hmm.
And there's actually like I felt like that was a callback to that issue right there.
Yep, that's actually that you're talking about the cover of Flash Volume 2, number 1. It was the very first issue, right?
That's exactly what went through my head when I saw Barry in that exact pose. To me, like without pulling the book out, it almost looks like they just copied the image on there for that reason.
Right.
And an event such as this, with somebody like Williamson like heading it with its creative purpose being what it is, I can honestly see them doing that on purpose.
Right. And obviously another reason why I think it's the 80s too is because you do, or the 70s, is because you do have Wally in his original, actually in his second Kid Flash costume, because his first Kid Flash costume was just a carbon copy of Barry's.
Mm-hmm. But this one, and to the point of it, I don't think any of these are the Barry that they're looking for. Obviously, the third one where you actually have Barry in a suit proper fighting crime with Wally Kid Flash, that's the only one that could potentially be him. But I don't really think any of these are him. But we see them just kind of going through their normal day, foiling Captain Cold. And we get a couple of pages of what would be just a classic 80s story.
Right.
And then it kind of just ends with Wally and Wallace on the roof looking down going, "What's going on?" And they're like, "I have no clue."
Yeah. Captain Cold is using very 80s dialogue, as he's fighting them, and you get Wallace and Wally at the end just kind of looking over, saying, "I don't know what's going on, but we got to find out what's going on."
Got to find out. No kids in sight. We don't know who was it that we only got accounted for 2 of the teams. Wally and Wallace are in that 80s world. Max Mercury and Jesse Quick are in the Mad Max world. So that leaves us with Jay Garrett. And who else was going in there? Did Jay even go in there, looking back on it?
No.
I don't know if Jay even went in.
Nope.
So it's just those two teams that went in. Jay stayed behind.
Right.
So
And
yeah,
all
we
these
don't
kids are in the third
by
one.
themselves. Yeah, nobody hot on their heels.
Hmm. So I can't wait to see where this goes because I think he's done a great job of setting up, what is going to be 3 issues, and then basically they've tacked on a fourth issue, which is kind of the aftermath of the stretch for Barry Allen. Um, so can't wait to see where it goes. All of these, I'm just having such a great time with Dark Crisis.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're like a DC Comics fan whatsoever, like this is definitely for you from them. This is a gift. Like it's really just playing heavily into the fandom, especially with the Flash having a focal point and the tie-ins being how important the Flash is to any crisis event. A Flashpoint was its own crisis event focused specifically on Flash. We know Barry's participation in the original as well as in Infinite Crisis. They're just always important characters. That was the first time we saw Barry since the original Crisis when he popped up in Infinite Crisis to put Superboy Prime in a chokehold and tell Bart he's not alone and to keep pushing. Dude, when that happened, I literally teared up and threw the book. I'm like, this is insane. So I'm happy to see that Flash has got a good seat for this event. And as far as Young Justice goes, it's a 6-part miniseries that's only here because of this event. So I'm thinking it's going to have a very important role for a very specific part of Dark Crisis proper. And I think it might play into Pariah's machine, if anything, being that it's obviously going to be taking place with elements of his machine that put them in this paradise world. So maybe that'll be their big contribution to it, because they have to have some kind of big contribution, but it's going to be very focused on something specific.
Right. And then I would also just caution everyone too, because everything that we're thinking could be totally upended, because DC announced that at the San Diego Comic-Con, as part of a Dark Crisis panel that they're going to do, they promised that everything we know about Dark Crisis will be changed by the end of this panel. We don't know what that means.
All we know is that they might be talking to a general public on that standpoint and not to cracked out DC fanboys. It might change nothing for us.
Good point. So the next step is Dark Crisis number 2. Comes out just after the 4th of July.
Yeah, we don't have nothing next week, I don't believe.
Nope. We got a week off, so I don't know. But then we'll start hitting.
Also, we didn't really. I think we touched on it in the last video. I don't remember if we did, but Flashpoint Beyond actually dipped its toes in Dark Crisis. I don't remember if we mentioned that, but
we did. We mentioned.
Okay, I was going to say I'm definitely going to be paying attention to that really closely, as well as the main universe proper. A lot of stuff is getting editorial notes right now, just kind of time placing it. Like, for example, the Black Adam standalone miniseries just started, and it did editorial note it. Events in this book happened shortly before the death of the Justice League. So there is a lot of stuff that's getting lightly touched by it, but it's not meant to play into it proper. But if something really surprises us and hits into it proper, we're definitely going to bring it over here and bring it into the show.
Yeah, I mean, I would not be surprised if Flashpoint has a major part in Dark Crisis, and they just haven't told anybody. I mean, look who you have. You have Jeremy Adams is one of the writers.
We just solved it. We just solved the big announcement. What are the odds that that's running at the same time? That's about to collide with this and become a whole Dr. Manhattan thing. Just watch.
Yeah, because as I think about it, you have Jeff Johns, who this is right up. This is exactly what he does, right? You've got Jeremy Adams is one of the writers, right? You have the fact that it was originally scheduled to be a weekly series, and then they changed it to monthly, almost like to run concurrently with Dark Crisis.
How many issues of Dark Crisis are there?
7.
How many issues of Flashpoint Beyond are there?
I want to say 6.
Yeah, and they did an issue 0 for that too.
Right, exactly. And one of the first things they do is they bring the Psycho Pirate, who has been in every single crisis.
Who's unaffected by the changes and has knowledge of everything.
We are so good.
And they're building up Dr. Manhattan over there.
Right.
Like they're not being coy about it. Like the Time Masters even said, if you keep tampering with stuff in our vault, the blue guy will come for you. Like,
Yep.
dude, we haven't seen the blue guy over here in a while.
Right.
You know, you
Who
have
knows?
you have Marvel about to be doing their Avengers, Eternals, X-Men thing.
Right.
So DC Sleeper was ahead of the curve, and they're doing their Watchmen, Justice League thing. Dude, that would
Yeah.
man, that would be that's the prediction for this week. Who knows what it'll be by the time we get more issues and more content next time. That's
Right.
my prediction.
Right. And so we'll have Dark Crisis 2 next. And then right after that, we will have a very special episode of DC Dark Crisis Deep Dive. We'll tell you more about that next time, I think, probably. Always keep them warning for more.
Oh, yeah. But in the meantime, do not forget to hit the thumbs up and comment on the video. And definitely go back if this is your first one. Check out the other ones. And if you don't have time to watch all of them, because that is a lot of content, be sure to at least leave a comment on them. Because at the end of all this, we'll be doing a special giveaway. And the more videos, the Dark Crisis deep dives that you comment on, the better your odds are at the giveaway. We got some stuff building along the way to make it awesome in nature.
Exactly. So that's going to do it for this episode of DC Dark Crisis Deep Dive. I am Paul. He is
Mark. But we
are Legion.
Hey, you're now leaving Sector 2815.